Welcome to this week's OK at Work with myself, Sarah Sawyer, and my colleague, Russell Berger, both attorneys at Offit Kurman. And today we are talking about giving feedback, management feedback to employees, when to give it, how to give it. We've talked about this a little bit on here as far as the need to give feedback and review employees and engage with employees. But what does that really look like, Russell, from a practical perspective when managers are having this type of conversation with their employees?
Yeah, so I mean, it's one of those topics, and we say it a lot on here. Well, you have to have this conversation. You need to address this, and picking a topic today, we figured, well, we never actually talk about what that looks like. So easy for us to say, go have that conversation, and then let you figure it out on your own. So we thought today we'd actually jump into it, and one of the first things I think we need to do is just acknowledge that these are difficult conversations, high stakes, potentially confrontational. There's baggage, there's emotions, there's all sorts of things going on. So it's a difficult conversation to have. But if you don't have it, then as we've talked about in many episodes here, the situations tend to get worse. Either not taking action as a manager indicates to the employee that they have permission to continue what they're doing. You miss out on the opportunity to enhance the relationship with the employee that you're managing by giving them positive, or constructive feedback in a positive manner that helps them grow and helps everyone. And it's frustrating to other people too when there's an obvious problem and as a manager you're not taking action about it. So one of the things that I like to do as I approach this is to do a little prep, right? So what's going on? Why am I having this conversation? Why is this a problem? And most importantly, what is my goal? And who is my audience? And how am I going to get this person I'm talking to align better with the goal? And so I want to think about all those things before I go in and have that meeting. And then and there's many different ways to do this, but one way that I tend to follow is something called the DESC method, and that's DESC. So what that really means is, the first thing I'm going to do is describe the dilemma or the issue, right? So this is what the problem is. This is what I'm observing. Then I'm going to go to E, explain the effect. This is why it's a problem. This is the negative consequence that it's causing for yourself, for the business, for your colleagues, whoever. S, I'm going to specify a solution. So this is what we're going to do about it. This is what we need out of you. This is your part in it. This is how we're going to move forward. And then C, depending on how it goes, it's either calling for a commitment or consequences. So ideally, that means the employees buying in and saying, okay, I get it. And as a manager saying, I want you to get it. I want you to be bought in on this. Employee says, yep, I got it. I'm going to commit to that. I can commit to doing this thing 10% better or spending more time in this place or whatever the topic is, so that then you can manage that person. They're bought in on it. And ideally it has an impact on their behavior.
Yeah, I think that's a great methodology, and doing some preparation is really key to being able to get the results that you want. And I think you mentioned it, Russell, the timing as far as making sure that you do these things pretty swiftly though as well, because as you mentioned, things can get worse, and also not just worse as it relates to that employee and any harm that they're causing directly to the business as far as, risk or some type of issue that might be happening, but also just from other employees' perspective, right? If they see that something's happening or someone's not getting the job done or their job is being impacted by this, the longer that you let things just kind of fester and wait, first of all, the harder it is to do exactly what you're describing and have this conversation and get into those details with them, because now too much time's passed. Now maybe they don't quite remember an incident that you're talking about, or it feels less relevant. Now it feels less relevant to you. Other things have happened, things have changed. So that's a big part of it. But also just what could occur in the meantime while you're waiting to have that conversation, and the increase in damage and increase in issues. So important to have those conversations. And then if there is anyone, think about if there's anyone else impacted as well that you need to have a conversation. So we're focused a little bit right now on obviously having that direct conversation and feedback with someone who's not meeting the mark on something or has done something correctly or is creating an issue for their colleagues or the business. But there might be other people who are impacted by that behavior who you might also need to have a conversation with, depending on the circumstance, so that they know that things are being addressed as well.
Yeah. And to that point about not putting it off, I mean, I think one of the good strategies there is instead of waiting to have the conversation, you give micro feedback and it's a constant reoccurring feedback loop. So when there's positive behaviors, you manage it in an affirming way. And when there's negative behaviors, you address it before it becomes a thing, before it becomes we got to call you into the principal's office and have this conversation with you. And obviously those things do happen and sometimes they escalate quickly and sometimes, it's just the nature of the limited time that we all have during the course of any given day. But the more you can give that micro feedback, the more you can constantly provide some or consistently provide some input to the employee. I think the better off, the easier these conversations get.
Yeah, and I would be remiss for us not to. I would be remiss not to wrap up mentioning that we should document all of these things too, right, Russell? So we always talk about documenting things, and it's always a good reminder that you want to make sure that when you give the feedback, or if you're reinforcing something with an employee, make sure you also make note of it as well, so that you have it for the file and can continue to monitor progress, and it can inform future conversations as well.
If you're going into these meetings and you do some prep work and you maybe prepare an outline or a bullet point script or something like that, I mean, you've already got your documentation right there. Add a few notes based on how the conversation went and stick it in the file.
Yeah, exactly. Well, thanks, Russell. We'll see you next time.
Thanks, Sarah.